Welcome to Rhythm of Love, the podcast. I'm Clarence.
And I'm Yolanda. We celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary by writing a book together about what it took to get us here.
And in this podcast, we go deeper and break down what we learned along the way. We hope you enjoy and engage.
Comment, share, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what you have to say about what it takes to make relationships last.
Yes, we will.
Welcome to Rhythm of Love, the podcast. I'm Clarence.
And I'm Yolanda.
And we're back after a few weeks off doing the conversation. And we're back in Studio B. This is
Studio B.
We're back in Studio B. We figured out the problem. The problem was this little piece of equipment right here was causing the whole computer to blow up. But we figured that out with some help and some other things. So we're back. We're back, and we'll see what's happening from here.
Yes. We hope y'all enjoyed while we were in Studio A. But we just want you to sit back and relax right now. Get comfortable.
Yeah.
Because the chillest married couple on the internet is about to give it to you the way you see it.
Let's take the title. Let's take the title.
We've been trying out all these introductory statements.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How to introduce. And we're still working on it. But hey, we're giving ourselves grace. We're fine.
Yeah.
We're fine. Okay. So what are we talking about today? I'm going to start with what the internet has ruined.
Oh yes, because
yes.
that's always.
And we believe what the internet has ruined is intellect and expertise.
For sure.
Completely ruined it. Everybody thinks if you can put a camera in front of you and spout words with a certain tone and cadence as if you know them, then that means you know what you're talking about. And if I could, search up on Google a couple of words and you pop up on my screen, I can say I have done my research.
Yes. So it is the dumbification of America, which I have said a couple of times, just that people don't value real intellectual pursuit. They don't value it. They assume that because I've done a little bit of this or I've done a little bit of that, and that some people have been wrong about some things that they have touted, that
people who have letters behind their name specifically, that, science gets it wrong, diet recommendations change, health, recommendations change. So that must mean that
they're wrong.
That they're just wrong and they're just making it up as they go along. And yes, they went to school, but did they really learn anything more than I have learned walking day to day in my life?
And the answer is yes.
Yes, they have.
Yes, they have.
Yes, they have. I'm
very
sitting
much,
up here.
Very much so.
Looking at, let me see if I can get a definition of research.
Let
me say my definition. The definition of research is not Googling. The definition of research is the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Part of research is that someone else can take your research and repeat it and get the same result. Research is not reading something only. Research is not listening to a video only. Research is getting knowledge from all the places that it exists and measuring up what you are concluding against what other people have concluded, against what new evidence shows, because new evidence comes out all the time, because science continues. It's a process. It's not an end result where now we know everything there is to know on this subject. And,
I mean, you could look at something as simple as and this is a very simplistic approach. You can look at something as light bulbs. It's a very, there was a time where we had a light bulb and it did everything that we did and everything we needed to do. Incandescent lighting was what it's called, where you basically run a electrical charge through a piece of filament. And all of its properties are heat and that it also emits a light.
Yes, as the energy passes through it.
But as we have grown as from technological standpoints, from our understanding of where light can be, what a light source can be, and things like that, we've moved very heavily to LEDs.
Right.
LEDs they don't have the same properties as old filament light bulbs. They last longer. They don't get nearly as hot. They don't get, they still emit very much the light sources that you need. But if you tell a person who is an expert or who is a Google expert in light bulbs that no, you don't have to do it that way, that doesn't mean that those people who did it that way for all of the years that they did it that way were wrong.
They just did it based on the information and materials that they had available to them at the time. Research methods get better.
Right.
It's like if I use this iPhone every day and then I say, well, I know how an iPhone works and I can make my own iPhone. No, it's not your interaction with a thing that makes you an expert about it. Because you interact with a lot of things. You live in a house every day. Can you build a house?
This is crazy because, you think of your phone. Your phone is a computer. It's really just a handheld computer. And I remember when my dad bought the first computer into our house, and that thing didn't even have a hard drive. I mean, literally didn't have a hard drive. All it had was RAM. So think of a Chromebook. And that's what that is what the equivalent.
So when you shut that joint down, everything you did.
So you'd have to go down there and, I'm aging myself, but you'd have to go down there and let's say there's a couple of video games that we played and there's a couple of, computer programs that you could play and not play that you could use. So you want to go down there and you want to use Microsoft Word. It's not Microsoft Word, but we'll go with that for now.
What was it? Word Perfect?
It was even before that. It's just a word processor. They didn't even have I don't even know what the name of it was.
Okay.
But there was a set of 5 floppy disks that you had to put in one at a time. And it read off of the floppy disk into the memory of the computer. And once you finished all 5, you could run the program.
5 floppy disks, y'all. How long did it take?
It took, 30 minutes. It took 30 minutes. So
to even just get started.
Just to get started. And once you got it loaded into the memory of the computer, then you could do work.
Yeah.
But then you also had to have floppy disk for saving name off your work and things like that. So, but if you got a power outage, you'd have to start all over. And by start all over, I mean you'd have to load the program back up. It was like that.
Yeah.
So
and all your work would be lost.
All your work would definitely be lost.
Yeah.
And
nobody questions like, how come computers aren't the same as they were from the beginning? Nobody questions that.
Right.
People expect I think, technology to get better, but they don't know that technology is based on science. Somebody had to understand how these different elements work together to make something that can process information and show it on your screen, and what happens when you click your mouse or click your tracking pad, whatever.
So, I mean, we're using technology as our kind of basis for this conversation, mostly because that's what I do for a living. But, you study a lot of science in your life and took a lot of...
Yes, I was a biochemistry major at undergrad.
Right.
And then I had to take research classes as a part of getting my master's in public health.
Right. So you have... Because that is where a lot of this stems from, is people talking. It's the internet. We didn't add this to this, but, the other thing that the internet has ruined, and this is a bonus ruin, Bonus ruin, because it ties into this so well. A bonus ruin is keeping fringe people fringe.
Yes.
So
right. The internet has given voice
right,
to people who should not be heard by the masses.
right. It's
It's
fringe,
okay.
right.
You can believe what you want to believe, and you and your people can get together and put on your tinfoil hats,
Sure.
or tell your alien stories about how you were abducted. But we don't need to spread that to the world. That's not, information is so loose in terms of what that is.
Right.
Information used to be things that were helpful and valuable and advanced knowledge. Now information is just stuff.
The gatekeepers are gone. That's what, and we talked about this.
Yes, you can make a blog, you can make a YouTube page, you can make, all the different places where you can publish your thoughts and ideas out to the world without anybody saying, wait a minute, have you looked at this closely? How does this compare to accepted knowledge right now? Why do you think this? Where did this come from? No. People just gulp it and swallow it because yes, there have been scientists and doctors who, who have followed a scientific method loosely and came up with things that, were disproven.
Correct.
There have been doctors and researchers who have used humans and even animals for nefarious reasons.
Absolutely.
And have done harm. All this is true, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You just throw the bathwater out?
Yeah.
Why don't you throw that baby out?
It's the bathwater that you're throwing out. It's the bathwater that you're throwing out, right?
Save the baby.
Right. In any profession, in any throughout history, there are always bad actors. Whether intentional, right? Whether intentional or unintentional,
right? Yes,
they just make mistakes as they're going along the way,
right?
But you gotta trim those out and take the real meat of what is available to you out there. This whole the Earth is flat thing is there are scientific.
Please walk to the edge.
So I was watching.
Please walk to the edge of the earth
and was watching. I was listening to the Higher Learning podcast.
Okay,
and they had a astrophysicist on there to discuss this, and he said he gave a very basic example of how you can check to see if the Earth is round or not.
Okay.
He said, now it doesn't even cost you a bunch of money. Just do this. He said, go to a beach and watch a ship sail away. Get a telescope. He said, if the Earth is flat, you should be able to see the full height of that ship, no matter how far it is away from you.
Yep.
What you might not, there may be a point where you can't see the ship. But if you have a telescope and you're looking far enough out, you should be able to see the full height of the ship out of the water. He said, but that's not what happens. Of course, he said, what happens is the bottom starts to sink away.
Right.
Because it's going over the curvature of the Earth. And he said, that is a very simple example of how you can see that the Earth is not flat and it is round.
Right.
Spherical, or that's not even round.
Right, spherical. How would people travel in ships or things travel in ships from country to country on this flat Earth? Wow. I guess they would take the circumference and make it just flatten all the way out.
Flatten all. It's very.
It just doesn't.
It's very.
I'm trying to make it make sense.
The people who have said this, I saw a guy say, a pilot would fly his plane and he never turns the nose down back towards the Earth. So the Earth must be flat if he's able to just fly straight. And it's a myopic view.
Right. It's your own, you don't know anything about
anything.
Physics, flight. You don't know.
Pilots.
And what they say?
They never turned their nose down. What they should have said was, I don't have to.
Right. Who knows if he really even talked to some pilots?
You know, that's the Donald Trump. Some people.
Right.
I talked to some people.
I can't name them, but some people have said.
So I mean, shout out to my guys like Mark Lamont Hill, who is on that Joe Budden podcast fighting for his life for scientific excellence.
When he shouldn't have to. It's a waste of time. It is a waste of people's time. All of us, anybody who watched it, the people who participating in the conversation.
Because they were flat earth guys.
Yeah.
They were, they were flat earth guys, and they were also, we didn't go to the moon guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, really, what does that change in your life? What is the value of even having those conversations?
They just want to be right. They want to
see about something. Why don't you be right about something that matters?
Especially when you're wrong. When you're wrong about this,
you're not even right anyway. Yes.
So I mean, I think Neil Armstrong. Somebody said it to him that he didn't go to the moon. I think he punched him in the face. So I mean, I don't know if they went to the moon.
No,
I'm not even sure if I care.
Right, that's what
I'm not even
saying.
sure if I care.
I'm not sure about, because the only people who trying to run off this earth are the uber rich people who think that's how they're going to escape the destruction that they have caused.
Right.
It's like, oh, I got to make it to Mars, or I got to make it here, I got to make it there, you know. So I don't care. I'm going to stay on this green earth. God gave us.
Tell you a person, if you don't follow them, get a chance, follow them on Facebook or IG, is follow Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he does an excellent job at explaining these types of things in language that makes sense so that you understand without having to get into the math of it all. Because, you know, it's all math, but without getting into the math of it all. You know, he talks about, you know, when a spaceship takes off, why doesn't, you know, if you ever watch a rocket get launched into space, it never launches straight up. It goes up, and then the first thing it does is turn. Mm-hmm. And he said, and why does it do that? And he said, because it is trying to match the curvature of the earth. If you don't want to go straight out, you want to achieve orbit. So the goal in achieving orbit and breaking free with the least amount of energy used, because math, is to actually pick and he tells you what the angle is. Pick an angle and accelerate at that angle, and eventually you'll get to the same speed that the Earth is turning. Mm-hmm. And once you get to that speed that the Earth is turning, and you're going the same speed at the right distance from the planet, you'll achieve orbit. Mm-hmm. You achieve orbit. That's what orbit is. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's pretty fast, like 18,000 miles an hour or something like that.
Wow. Yeah, see, I'm not going to act like I know what any of the science behind that. I don't know.
And it's repeatable by anybody who does it. Whoever does this is what the answer that they get every time.
Yes.
Otherwise, you SpaceX and you just blowing ships up. No,
well, I mean, people from SpaceX are probably using, you know, they're bound by the same rules.
Yes, they
as well. They're bound by the same rules, and, you know, they're trying to be quicker, faster, cheaper, whatever, lighter, you know, they're not, all the things.
And that's a different thing. They're not going into orbit. They're not going into outer space. They're just getting far enough away from the planet that they have no gravity. So, you know, not specific enough gravity.
Yeah. I mean, for the people who are taking like the tourist rides, right. But for them to go pick up the astronauts at the space station, you know, they gotta.
Yep. So, all right.
Anyway,
we won't get into that.
The point is, it's just, you can't read a couple of videos on social media made by somebody whose credentials you have no idea.
You cannot. How
they think they know what they're talking about.
That is probably my biggest pet peeve about all of this, which is because I argue online. That's one of the things that I do. I argue with the people online, you know. And
that's good because I think you argue with me less.
sure,
You get your debate juices.
My debate juices out. And the biggest thing I always say to anybody, if I make a point to them, I always make a point to show them where I got this information from. I mean, all I got to do is put a hyperlink here. You can click on it and read it if you want. You can click on it and go to it if you want. And this is the person. You get to see their credentials. You get to see their background I'm not quoting it as I did this.
Just know this. Right.
I'm saying I've done some reading, and these are reputable people who have a history of doing these types of things, and this is what they say.
Right. And you can look it up for yourself, and you can read it too, and you can judge for yourself. And that's repeating. If there was a repeating of the research that you could do at this level, that is what you're doing.
And it's not even research, it's just recanting.
And it's because you got a master's degree. Or because even at your bachelor's level, I don't know how much writing you did at the bachelor's level, but you did a lot.
Enough to take English 4 times. So enough to take English 4 times.
And I don't think in English 101,
English 101 4 times.
You have to do cite sources and things like
Every
that.
spring, I was guaranteed to be in an English class.
And then you have a son who majors in English.
Yeah,
so it was just going through you and being deposited into your sperm.
It was crazy.
Took it so much.
It was crazy.
That when you made a baby,
he
ran towards English.
Yeah, I definitely took English 4 times.
But my point is that you understand that at the intellectual level, intellect to intellect, you can't just walk into a room and make a profession or a declaration without some backup. You can't write something just even to your professor, much less to a set of other scientific peers or, intellectual peers. You can't turn anything in and get a good grade on it if it just came off the top of your head or if it just came from some YouTube videos that you watch. Right. And now if it's a fiction class when you're learning to write fiction, you can write whatever you want off the top of your head. Right. So anyway, that's it bothers us too.
That people are not willing to do that on the other side.
Right. Yes, that's what you were getting at.
I was getting to.
Yes.
But when you ask them, so Mark Lamont Hill asked the guy on the podcast. He said, lots of scientists believe the Earth is flat.
Right.
And he said, tell me
one.
Just one.
And the dude got upset. There you go again, asking me to name one. That's because at this intellectual level, that's what you do. Mark Lamont Hill can't just make declarations.
And he didn't say, and he even gave him some grace and said, I'm not asking you to name one right now. Go home.
Look back at what you've been reading.
And come back tomorrow and say, this is the person or these are the people who have said this. And no one is ever willing to do that.
Right. I don't understand. Even in your online engagements on social media.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
They'll just say whatever and
because
it's true because I said it.
I want to believe this, so that makes it true.
Yes. And who is the head, the king of that, who they made president?
It's crazy.
They made somebody president who is the guy at the end of the bar just spouting off what he wants everybody to believe.
And because that guy is occasionally right.
I mean, so occasionally, so rarely, I say that. I mean, rarely.
A clock with no battery is right
2 times a day in America.
In anywhere.
Because in Europe, they use, it's got to go.
But it's not, they don't have 24 numbers.
Well, okay.
I've never seen a clock.
An analog clock. Okay, got you. Got you. An analog clock.
An analog clock, yes.
Right.
You're talking about a digital clock.
Yes.
Okay, yes. A digital clock is different.
Right.
So, okay.
But an analog clock.
And that's right once a day.
Right, that's right once a day. And an analog clock is right twice a day.
Okay.
And you're going to base your whole belief on the 2 times that you saw it be right.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. So, all right.
Okay.
So that's
our thing.
That's
Yes.
two things that the internet has
It's
ruined
ruined.
that got doubled up because they work so closely together. They work so closely together.
Please comment. We want to know how your interactions on the internet, or your idea of do your own research and all that stuff. Please comment what's going on with y'all.
All right.
Okay, so to the meat of our episode
Today's
today.
topic.
Yes.
Today's actual topic.
Today's topic is, what is toxic masculinity?
I hate this question. I didn't know how she was going to frame it, but I know I hated it.
Let me
It's a
pull my notes up.
It's a terrible question. It's a terrible question. But
okay, what do you see toxic masculinity? What do you see it at? What do you think toxic masculinity exists? Let's
sure,
start.
Let's start at the top.
You do.
So,
okay.
Okay.
And then what would you say it is?
I think toxic people exist, whether or not
Okay.
they're masculine or feminine. I think there are people who have traits and attributes that are not productive to
either themselves or other people.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that what has transpired is because we have been working through a matriarchy for so long, and women have kind of been not treated as well.
A patriarchy.
I'm sorry. You're right. That's sorry. A patriarchy for so long, and women have not been treated, as first-class citizens. I mean, that's just the base of it. That now that we are in a world where we can have a little bit more voice equitably along everyone being able to say what their truth is, that a set of people have latched on to this term to describe men who have characteristics and traits that they don't like.
That they don't like.
That are detrimental, that are bad to women, that are bad to people, that all of those kinds of things. And toxic masculinity has become a catch-all phrase for those things.
Right. Because sometimes it is things that they don't like. So I agree with you. I do not like how, in general terms, people will take, words that have real meaning and water it down so much. Your last boyfriend was a narcissist because he lied. No, that's not a narcissist. Or,
You need more evidence.
You need more evidence than that. Lying is, yes, one of the things that they do, but every liar is not a narcissist.
Right.
Or, whatever. Just the term toxic. Like, okay, really? There's a lot of terms that have been snatched and watered down for the masses. People go to therapy, or people hear therapy speak or read therapy books. They grab on to some terms, and then they want to use them, and without really understanding the definition or caring about what the real definition is.
Sure.
But, do I believe that toxic masculinity exists? Yes. I think, we could talk about toxic femininity.
Absolutely.
If you want, but staying with this original topic, it is a phenomenon that has been perpetuated over all this time, where women have been subjugated, or, like you said, treated as second-class citizens, etc., or not even citizens at all, or not even having their own, personhood and rights. So yes, and I think that's why it gets its own title, why there's not a term toxic femininity. It's just like, in my opinion, racism. Can Black people have biases and, beliefs about white people that are harmful or based on stereotypes, or, I don't know, I won't say harmful, are negative.
But they're only prejudices.
But they're prejudices, yes. And unless enough Black people who held these beliefs were in power to affect the lives of white people, then, then it's just prejudice.
Right.
It's just a bias. Whereas, so, that's why toxic masculinity exists, because men have been able to put their will out. What they say, what they believe has been, what is said, what is believed by people for so long. But let me refer to my notes.
I'll let you refer.
I'll say, I thought to myself, what would be my definition of toxic masculinity? Now, mind you, based on what we just said, this is just my thoughts or what I see. I'm not trying to say this is what it is, because I also wrote down an official definition of toxic masculinity. But I think it's when manliness is determined primarily by appearance and outward behavior as opposed to character. And part 2 of that is, even when character is involved, we're focusing more on a man's ability to save face or to look tough or to look unbothered than, being vulnerable or being affected or, needing to learn or, so it's all these things like, it hurt when that girl rejected you on the street. But or at the club or wherever, and instead of just saying, okay, she has a right to reject me, just because I find her fine and I'm attracted to her, doesn't mean she has to be attracted to me. And just move on with your life. There's going to be plenty of women out there who are going to be attracted to you, or one. You only really need one, the one for, that's going to be your life partner, in my opinion, or 2 or 3. Let's say that. But, it hurt. And instead of just saying, oh, wow, let me look at myself. Do I feel like I look good? Do I feel like I represent myself well? You just lash out at the woman. That's an example of toxic masculinity.
Yeah. And I say that what you're describing is a character flaw, and it's not specific to men. It's just a character flaw that people have.
But it's been prevalent among men. It's been okay among men. Nobody, and I'll say nobody, but so what I think happens, which is perfectly fine when we talk about the difference between men and women, is that we're each speaking from our own perspective. So you have the perspective of growing up with a male role model who, for the most part, wasn't toxic. Dad, I know you're going to watch this. And we're cool. We're cool. I love you. I've seen the man that you've grown into be, but you were a little bit, what's the word?
Sexist.
Male, right. Sexist. Yeah. Talk about women driving and da-da-da-da. So, or not knowing the directions to get to places.
So, again,
but for the most part, you learn to respect women.
Right. He always, and that's him, but he always preach being respectful of women.
Yes.
Again, there were areas that he was not as ideally respectful as every woman would like.
Right.
For example, the 2 you gave, women driving and directions and things like that. But that today is lumped into this toxic masculinity thing, and he would be labeled as being, having toxic masculinity. And that's why I think it's such an overreach to use this statement for those things, because he never, to my knowledge, he never felt like, women were second class. He worked with all ladies.
Yeah.
And, he called us, he would say things to us like, make sure you take care of your mom. And, you don't have to do nothing for me, but make sure she's taken care of. And she in a house full of all boys. Mm-hmm. So he is very much, he was very much mindful of trying to be as, respectful of of women as you
He
could
knew
be.
to be.
He knew to be.
Mm-hmm.
And what you are getting today is even the least of those characteristics qualifies you for this toxic
masculinity.
And that's what I mean by it's just such a catch-all phrase that people are using now. And so let me go on the other side of this, because I say this too. The social media sphere right now is looking for men to be more vulnerable and more sensitive and those types of things, until they don't want them to be that, until they're not needed. So they basically want men to be almost like light switches, because as I said to you, all of those characters, not all, those characteristics that you describe of not getting into your feelings when your feelings get hurt and all those things come into play when you need that man to get the job, to make sure he's, being a breadwinner, because that's a big thing now. They want the man to be this breadwinner.
That's always been the thing.
The
Right.
sole breadwinner. I wanted to.
That's a whole different conversation.
Your feelings don't matter then if you're not working. We need your feeling. We need
If
that.
your boss is treating you bad.
When there's a confrontation in the streets, and you need me to defend you, then all of a sudden you need me to be as masculine as I can be in that situation. It's not, let's fight this guy, me and you together.
It's for some women it might be.
Not for most though. Only when they see you losing.
I would fight with you. I don't want you to.
We already know you've never even been in a fight, so
No.
you've never even been in a fight.
It says, I know some tricks of the trade.
You've never even
find a weapon. My sister taught me that. No, Sister Sharon.
I hope I survive until you come back with your weapon.
I don't even have to come back. Use things that are within my reach.
And just don't hit me in your wild, blind swinging.
Wildly and blindly swinging.
Avoid hitting me. All right, if you can. So, my point is that the value in having high masculine traits is there. It doesn't mean that there are not some negative sides to it as well. And I think that we are focusing on some of those things. You have said to me, my mom has said to me, having a man who handy, who uses hands around the house, that means something. But you don't get that by being in touch with your feelings and sensitive.
I think you can be both. Handy and sensitive to the feelings of yourself and others.
In my opinion, it takes a certain logical processing.
Yes.
And logical processing disassociates your feelings from what's happening.
Right. I think a well-rounded person knows when to use logic, does not deny the fact that they have feelings.
Sure.
And that sometimes you need to process through those, or sometimes you need to listen to those to see what they're telling you. And so it's not like one or the other. It's not like I can't have feelings because we're not Spock. We don't have to be Spock in order to be productive and use logic and be handy. And
I agree with that. What you're really describing is maturity. Because when you're talking 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, you run hot at those ages. You run hot.
You can run hot. You certainly can. I mean, and right, your hormones are all over the place, and and you're getting messages from all over the place about what it means. My boys gotta look at me this way. Girls gotta look at me this way. What do girls like? I like actually walking up to girls and saying, what do you like? tell me what you're looking for in a man. That does, that doesn't happen at 16.
No, it doesn't happen.
You're just looking at movies or you're listening to conversations and you're making your judgments. So yeah.
And it only takes one time. So men tend not to hold on. What?
I'm trying to make it easy for you to do the editing later. You got a boogie.
Oh, they can't see it from me.
That's what I was hoping. They can't see. Somebody be on the screen like. And anyway.
If they that close, it don't bother me.
Okay.
Maturity.
Okay. Yes. That does. You're right about maturity, but you have to have a place to learn these things, and
you learn trial and error. You learn.
Yes, but sometimes, like we've said, you can make an error that sends you down a whole path.
Sure.
That you could have avoided had you been in a position where you were learning from someone, a mentor, a father figure, whatever.
So
the right choice.
My dad is a big proponent of you don't have to make the mistake to learn from somebody else.
Exactly.
So which is what you're describing.
Yes.
But and that is true for some things, and it varies from person to person. What
the capability of learning. Yes. Right. I mean, some people are so self-focused that they look at someone else's mistake as that would never happen to me. So, and just ignore the lessons. But one thing I want to say is that I think, when a person hears the term toxic masculinity, the tendency is to wrap either this group of men or all men or even one man as his whole self is a toxic masculine self.
Yes.
No, he has some traits. When I think, when women are safely using the term and not just trying to be harmful or trying to, bash men, she is saying this trait, this thing that you do, this way you responded to this, that was toxic masculinity. Not you are a toxic male.
I don't think, I don't think that they make that distinction, which is what you're saying. But I also don't think the term itself lends itself to that level of discretion or that level of delineation to say, I'm not talking about this. I mean, someone says to me, you have toxic masculinity. Those are two very broad words.
Right. Just thrown together at this person
to describe
one thing I said or did.
Right.
Yeah. No, I get that completely. And that goes back to some therapist leaked this term out into the world or, purposefully, probably because you're trying to educate people and people just take it and run with it. So, I just want to give the definition of toxic masculinity that I found.
Sure.
Which is, it refers to a collection of offensive, harmful beliefs, tendencies, and behaviors rooted in traditional male roles, but taken to an extreme. This dangerous idea of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression, and can be harmful to the person's mental health who is experiencing it and doing it, just like racism is harmful to white people. And it can be, harmful to all genders because, you're taking your beliefs out on other people. So I think, it's a shame that people are just using it, just like you said. Like, I don't like this guy. I don't like the way he talks. He's too rough. He's too loud. He's too gruff. So he's a toxic male.
Right.
Let me just let you know, I have thought of you as gruff and rough and, a very, able to ignore feelings or feeling the need to put feelings aside. But I've never called you toxic.
So, I'm not sure the term existed for us at those points.
And I'm even looking back and wanting, I wouldn't apply it at any point. I wouldn't have applied it even when it came to fruition. I wasn't like, oh yeah, that's what Clarence suffers
I've been
from.
looking for that.
I've been dealing with toxic masculinity all this time. But do I think that some of the, especially the homophobia part, is especially kind of prevalent in the Black community, in religious, the Black Christian community, where and this idea of he was raised by a woman, so that's why he has these more feminine, what we think of as more feminine traits. But all of this is a spectrum. You're not, this effort to try to be all man is what hurts guys. I'm all man, but maybe I do like, dancing, or, maybe, which,
I wasn't sure where this was going.
I was just,
I wasn't sure where this was going.
and when it's not just homophobia, it's transphobia.
Okay.
It's, just defining these rules of gender that don't allow people to really be themselves.
Okay, that's fine. Like I said, I just wasn't sure where it was going. It was going in a direction. I was like, oh my, what are we about to say here? So, but you weaved around those cones really nicely. So we go.
Wasn't even weaving. I said what I wanted to say. I did say
you
what I
weaved
wanted
around
to
some landmines pretty easily there. So okay, we can move forward.
This is a safe space.
It's a safe,
This is a safe space.
Yeah. So again, I say the same thing. I think that all of those types of things that you're describing about characteristics for those men can be found in different traits, but in
people across the board,
across the spectrum. And so, I don't like the term toxic masculinity. I would much prefer toxic people. Toxic, because a person because now what you're doing is you are identifying an individual as having things that you don't like, or traits that you think are not beneficial to him or her or you. I mean, we watch the Pop the Balloon thing, and we say the same thing. If it's a male lineup and one of those men says anything that is, I'm not attracted to this woman, some people take it and like, okay, and they move on. Some women immediately start to lash out, because their feelings are hurt.
And vice versa.
I mean, the same thing with
where my example started is if the person is not, doesn't have to like you, because maybe you think everybody likes me. You've been thought of and honored as,
there are people like that
who think I'm the best thing going and coming. And if you don't like me, it must be something wrong with you. Not that you just have a difference of taste.
Sure.
Everybody ain't for everybody. But yeah, I mean, so yes, I agree that, there is room for us to talk about just toxic traits of being a person, either in a relationship. These toxic traits can exist in your job. These toxic traits can exist, and they're not assigned to any one gender. However, I think the attachment to maleness is I keep going back to the racist example. Like, are we going to do the work? Like, yes, there are some people who will say, Black people who will say horrible things about white people. They don't want their child to even, they don't trust white people. They don't want white people near them. And that's a whole different conversation about whether there's any evidence to say why they're saying these things. It's not like they just woke up one morning and decided this, or they were born like this, or whatever. But are we going to spend the time working on those white people? I mean, those black people who have these negative thoughts about white people? Or are we going to work on the people who have the power to inflict what they believe onto others? That's where we're going to focus our attention. And that's why I think it's the toxic masculinity has gotten the attention, at least originally, lack of gatekeeper, internet ruins everything type of things that we were already talking about has happened to this term. But, originally it was because men had the power to inflict, men as a group. That whole Harvey Weinstein thing couldn't have happened. R. Kelly couldn't have happened. Puff Daddy couldn't have happened if men in their space, the world, the society, the industry, or whatever hadn't turned a blind eye. Said, this is okay. This is what we expect. Boys will be boys.
So the boys will be your boys part, I'm okay with. I hear what you're saying. I mean, and I agree with. I don't mean I'm okay with the term boys will be boys. I'm just not.
I know what you mean. You see what I'm saying.
Right. I see what you're saying. But there were women there too. There were people there.
Right. But how much power did when women stood up to these men, they were blacklisted from.
But you're talking about the victims.
Not even the victims. I'm talking about women around these men who didn't like it. It's either join it or get out.
But I don't have any evidence of this. But
I'm just saying the evidence.
I don't have any evidence of what you're saying. I don't have any evidence of what you're saying. If you're saying that women were blackballed or were blacklisted because of these things, I bet you that any man who said it was in the same place. Is in the same place.
Yes.
So
because that was the societal expectation, is that this is more okay than not okay. And the people who think it's not okay, they're just not playing the game like they're supposed to.
Right. So Harvey Weinstein is a predator for the things that he's been convicted of. I was going to say accused of, but he's been convicted of these things. I think he's a predator. And with all of the people who have come out and said these things are happening, I think the old boys club is a real thing.
Yes.
I absolutely agree with it.
Couch, I think what is the studio lay?
My
phrases for that, but
my example would have probably been the right to choose. It would have been abortion, because I think that's men impressing upon women their beliefs. Yes. That's toxic.
All of these things we just listed are toxic.
Right. So I
can agree on that.
We can absolutely agree on that. And it's because of a combination of volume and influence.
Right. Which is what I'm saying. So that's why toxic masculinity was pulled out. Now, if you're just, maybe you're dealing from relationship to relationship or from person to person, then you could say to as many women as is true for, the way you, dog a man because he, is not a fighter, or, the way you dog a man because he got depressed when he lost his job. Yes, that's toxic and that's not helpful, but there's no why. And any broader societal view of a man being a wuss or unworthy of being called a man has been defined by men, not by women. And yes, we were in the soup. We were immersed in it. So some of us picked it up and were like, yeah, you're not manly. But that wasn't our definition.
Yeah, we're moving into slippery stuff here. I mean, and I don't want to talk too much longer on this because
we need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think we need to wrap it up. I think we can agree to disagree if that's.
It's not about. I mean, I think that I think that the pendulum is swinging too far again. I think that it's been on one side for so long. So I understand what you're describing because it's been on so long, one side for so long, and it's swinging to the other side, throwing the baby out with the bathwater on the other side.
Okay.
Because you get on the other side and you're telling people that this middle ground is, or this not even middle ground, that this other side, it's okay to be this and it's okay to be that. And maybe it is. And maybe it's not. Maybe it is and maybe it's not. And, moving to a more homogenous society is wild to me.
I mean, that point we will definitely have to agree to disagree on. I will just have to agree to disagree on that one. That, yeah, because I don't even want to start talking because that's going to take us, we'll be 10
you let people live. I got no problem with that. If the answer is people going to do what people going to do and let them do what they going to do, then I'm fine with that. But the problem comes in the actual implementation of that. The actual implementation of that is harder than the idea of it.
Well, we can have a part 2 if necessary. If we, talk about this offline and agree to having a part 2, because, I do have thoughts on that. And, that's why I'm leaving it as we can agree to disagree on that point, because I think what has been, I don't know the problem that you're detecting, and that's what I would want to get into with you if we were to continue this conversation, in the podcast, is, I would need to know, like, what do you think the harms will be or are currently in places where that's happening, because my thing is just, I think if we just have, and I'm going to sound real frou-frou when I say this, but if we just had more love and grace for allowing people to be who they are and not always trying to categorize people. And I think that's what happened. What am I saying? I think that's what happened. I just was in a conversation with some other people where we were trying to figure out something in terms of sexuality and gender that we were familiar with, that we grew up with. And, someone finally said, maybe it's just, we're trying to build these categories and maintain these categories and people are breaking out of them. And then, so then, your statement about let people live is one way to say the same thing I'm saying, which is just have love for grace for people. Everybody's working on something. And sometimes the way you appear, is not the whole, all the time, the way you appear is not the whole story of you.
I mean, okay.
And there's a lid for every pot.
I think we live in cycles. I think we are going into I don't want to use the word renaissance because that kind of is a broader term, but we're moving into that kind of era right now.
Sure.
Like 14th, 15th century type of how people were living. And I think that there's an ebb and flow to those things.
Sure.
You're talking about,
and people push back and the pendulum swings in the other direction. Yes. And now, right. Yeah. We're swinging in because, men were the poets. Men were the the things of beauty. They wore the makeup and the wigs and the.
That's crazy. And to me, that's crazy.
Right. But it's only crazy because it's not the norm for you.
Right.
It's only crazy that, it's not because it's just inherently crazy.
Right. Which is why I say
The pendulum is swinging.
The pendulum is swinging for sure.
All
So
right. I think that's a good place to stop.
all right, good enough for me.
So housekeeping.
So okay. So we are still. Let me give you guys a quick update because we talked about this a little early. So I still ride my bike. So make sure you follow me on Instagram. I post almost daily.
I mean, because we ride almost daily.
I ride almost daily. So I'm up to 800 miles on my Peloton. Just short of 800 miles.
Doesn't he look thinner on screen, y'all? Compare him to a previous video.
And I'm probably down about. I lost a bunch of weight real early, but
there was a leveling
off. So so I was about 253, 252, right around there, and now I'm at about 235. I'm sorry, did I say one?
You said two.
Okay, so now I'm at about 235.
Okay.
So, and I've been kind of living there, and my ideally, I want to lose about 15 more and be right around the 215, 220 area. But I don't know that I'm going to get that far unless I decide to change some other things that I want.
Yes, that's where I am too. I keep gaining and losing the same 8 to 10 pounds just over and over and over again. I can't break through to losing more. And I know my diet is a big part of that. Taking Moni out to Chick-fil-A and McDonald's because it's easy or cheaper. Because it's getting expensive, and she wants to go out every night. It's like, all right, well, I'll just sit here and let you eat, and I'll put something together at home.
So my new thing this week is that I'm trying is I'm doing salad for lunch every day.
Okay.
With I don't do a creamy dressing. I only do a creamy dressing once a week.
Okay.
Other days I'm doing a balsamic or vinaigrette or something like that. No sweets during the week. And I try to avoid it. I don't always get to avoid it, but no sodas during the week. And then I save all of those calories for the weekend.
For your weekend. Yeah, I might.
And it's just an attempt to try to
copy off of you, and
that's why
cough off of you, as your mother says.
So I bought that lettuce and I made it through the.
You did. You actually were for eating it so much that we didn't throw any lettuce away. You actually ate it all fresh. And I can say the last time I lost a significant amount of weight, barring the keto, because that's a whole different thing. When I was losing weight for our vow renewal, you remember I was eating salads for dinner every night. Salads, no matter what, I made for the family. So yeah, I think, definitely more fruits and vegetables. Shout out to Simone's aide, Elizabeth, who has been bringing way more fruits and vegetables into our hot house than we have had in a long time. So that's supposed to be helping. But yeah, I can take a page from your book and cut my sugar during the week.
Right. And it's not a 100% cut. It's just no extra
cut
stuff.
My carbs during the week.
Because I still get a bowl of cereal a couple days a week.
Yeah.
And that's
I don't even eat cereal. I save my sugar for like real sugar stuff.
So, when we go out though, I usually get unsweet tea and have unsweet tea lemonade to get some of the sugar out.
Cut some of the sugar.
Or, just things like that.
Yeah.
All water-based drinks, no carbonated stuff if I can avoid it, things like that.
And the crazy thing is I've been doing that for the longest. I don't drink it's very rare that I drink a soda. Maybe when we go to Squisitos and
that's all we had.
We drink.
Those are the times, right? Was all we had.
But yeah, so if the journey continues,
the health journey continues.
The health journey continues. We're trying to be strong. Clarence don't want to be left on the bench while the wives with the other husbands, while the wives traipse around and
that's fine
and do stuff.
It's fine, bench. All right. So every Sunday night, 9 p.m. we are on twitch.tv/DJ C# for Heartbeats. This week we got coming up Triple Play third Sunday. We got spotlights that we do, just all kind of stuff. Just have a
Like
good
games
time.
and contests.
Games and contests and things like that. So just try to be as engaging and fun as we can.
Yes. And it is fun. So come see us. Come through and judge for yourself.
Yeah. So, and those are the things I got.
Yeah, I guess that is what we got.
Nothing else major coming up. Some gigs, but this summer will
People
be this
don't
summer.
want to know that. That's not for the people. Unless you want to find a booking, book djcsharp@gmail.com for a
We
wedding,
doing those.
party, especially like the birthday parties of our age group and older.
Yeah.
He says it out.
Yes.
Everybody has a great time.
Because I don't do the young kids parties. I don't let the music. I do. But if you call me, I know I got friends I can refer you to. I avoid the young kids parties at all costs. So.
All right. It's been a pleasure, y'all. We're going to get our closing statement. Oh, yes, because our closing statement, you haven't been liking it so much.
Yeah. Got to figure out a better closing statement.
I don't know what happened. You didn't love it for some time.
It fell off.
Everything changes.
Everything changes. So.
All right. Peace.
Until we meet again.
Yes. Take care. Be good to yourselves and to others.
We hope you've enjoyed another exciting episode of Rhythm of Love, the podcast, hosted by Clarence and Yolanda Lewis.
Theme song by Kendra R.
Book graphics by Rihanna Denise.
More information is available at cylentertainment.com.
Please join us on Sunday nights for our live stream on twitch.tv/DJC Sharp.